Management skills aren't just managing a team. They also include things like politics and communication. Find the shittiest company you can in terms of management and work there, right? And what you'll find is, like, if you do your job right, you'll be a shit umbrella for everybody underneath you. And then you try to work your way up.
Welcome to SaaS That App, building B2B Web Applications, the podcast where we share real-world stories, practical advice, and tech insights for those building or thinking about starting a tech-enabled business. I'm your co-host, Aaron Marchbanks.
And I'm Justin Edwards. Each week we bring you the stories, strategies, and insights you need to build your SaaS or tech-enabled business smarter, not harder. Let's dive right in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to SaaS That App. I am your host, Aaron Marchbanks, and with me, as always, Mr. Justin Edwards.
Almost always. Hey, how you doing, man?
Doing well. I just noticed the white headphones. Are those new?
No, I've only had those for about 3 years.
I think maybe there's just so much white now in your background, and I mean on the shirt, it's like you've got this really cool black and white theme going on.
Yeah, maybe I've just balded sufficiently that it really makes the headphones pop.
Well, and our guest today also has the white cap, so I guess I'm the only one that didn't get the memo about there needs to be some white action. I got the doors, so we'll go with that. Well, with us today, we do have Rishi Ramraj, who is the CTO at Sling. This is a shift scheduling and workforce communication platform used by tens of thousands of businesses, keeping operations running smoothly. He comes to us with about 20 years of experience across all kinds of different systems, enterprise level, mobile platforms, tooling, large scale web applications. So just a whole mess of fun stuff, and is focused currently on kind of evolving this mission critical business to business platform and actively reducing technical debt, scaling systems that real businesses depend on every day. And so we're going to dive into a whole lot of that. Rishi, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Aaron. Correction,
Okay.
Former CTO of Sling.
Okay, former CTO. Okay, I'm going to have to ask about that.
Yeah, we actually sold the company several years ago.
Okay. And Sling is still out there.
Oh man, that opens up
Still
all
out
the
there.
post-acquisition chats. Now we can talk
Yes,
about
it
Now we
does.
can talk about exits. That's my favorite topic. So awesome.
You've made Justin's day. Well, Rishi, just kind of jumping way back into your history, your resume reads like a pretty traditional path that a lot of us take. Intern, web developer, consultant, senior developer, server administrator, and then all the way up here to the CTO. So going all the way back, tell us a little bit about how you got involved in technology. What got you to where you're at?
Yeah, for sure. I was actually, there's a bit of a secret history of the internet here. I was a demo scener back in the day, back in high school. So I don't know if you all remember the demo scene, but the demo scene came out of the IRC botnet wars, where a bunch of those hackers would create demos instead of modding Diablo to give you memory hacks and stuff like that. And that's kind of where I joined in, and that was in high school. It was a while ago. And I wrote a whole bunch of OpenGL apps and discovered very quickly that I was terrible at designing games, which was what I was originally trying to do. But I was great with physics and implementing code, so I just kept at it all throughout high school and university. By the time I got to university, I had an article published in Game Programming Gems, I think it was 5, on simulating the physics of grass and leaves and whatnot, and that sort of brought me through all my internships in university. I went to University of Waterloo, doing just 3D graphics. But then I also discovered that, not a fan of the desktop software world, so my focus shifted again, and the discovery was along the lines of I wanted to know how my impact was actually making money, and it's difficult to measure if you're doing 3D rendering and whatnot. So the stuff that I enjoyed working on the most, I actually did some work on Maya and did a lot of the technical debt work on Maya at one point. So then after that, let's see, I went into SaaS, I guess, worked at a number of companies and then just scaled up, like you said. At one point I was working at a DNS company. I attempted several startups along the way. So I sort of knew inherently at the start that the point of this was going to be a startup of some sort. And back in my demo scene days, I actually ran into ANNs. So like the way that I chose my university career was pretty interesting. I force ranked all of the curriculums of all of the courses that I was interested in taking by whether or not they offered AI. And the two that came up tops were like U of T had a software engineering degree that had an AI component, and systems design engineering at U Waterloo had an AI component, but it was also the rest of engineering. So I felt that doing a computer science degree was redundant because I had already learned a lot of computer science up to that point. And then so I studied AI in university. And the thing that I learned about AI was pretty simple. If you don't have data and you can't train it, it's not worth anything to sell.
It sounds familiar.
So I was like, well, I'm not going to make money selling AI because it's a hard sale. I might make money using AI, but I didn't expect it to be like nearly like 20 years later. But the other thing I learned in that process was like, if you are a AI vendor, you're competing with all the other AI vendors. Whereas if you're an AI user, you're just reaping the benefits of that competition. So that's sort of like catching it with my career today. It's kind of interesting to see it to see it happen. Yeah, after that, I joined Sling. Sling was a remote company, and I was a remote employee when it was novel for all of several months before the pandemic hit. I remember while I was at Sling, I got promoted to CTO.
We started our consulting firm. We were like, we like to work from home, and all of our people are going to work from home too. We don't have to pay for an office. We don't have to do any of that. It's going to be great. We're going to save money. And after the fourth developer desk showed up in my living room because people wanted to have an office to work from, we bought an office and moved out. But yeah, then magically during the pandemic, after the pandemic was over, nobody ever came back to the office. We got rid of it. It's kind of funny that it's like, we told you guys to do this 4 years ago. Why did it take a global pandemic for you to work from home?
Yeah, we took the longer approach where we had an office and finally had one person was like, I still want to work here, but I don't want to live here. It's like, well, we'll test balloon that. This has been like 15, 16 years ago or more. So way before it was cool and certainly before necessary. But that's kind of how we got into it. And then after that, it was just like, snowball rolling down the hill. It's like, oh, well, I want to live here, or, my family wants to move there. And it's like, suddenly we had 2 people in an office. It's like, this is pointless. We need to not do this. So yeah.
I was going to say, it was a pleasure to actually encourage people to like go have a social life outside of the office as well. It's kind of funny how that worked out because like, especially during the pandemic, you had a lot of social isolation.
Mm-hmm.
My overall experience with management has been something like, if you hire the right person, you don't often have to tell them how to do their job. Not only do they know how to do their job, they kind of have a rough plan of where it's going to go. And what you need to help them negotiate is like the different parts of their life with their job to make sure that like the exchange there is voluntary in both directions, and generally guide them through getting to the next level of progression, right? In terms of communications and interactions with the rest of the business. Beyond that, it's like, if I hire the right person, I don't have to teach you how to code. You already know how to code.
Yeah, I have hire smarter, manage hard has always been our mantra, and I don't like to manage particularly very much, so hire smart's been key. So nice to hear someone else say that. So you signed on with Sling and you were remote from the onset, or how did Sling have a remote program?
From day one, actually. So I came into Sling when Sling was relatively mature, and we had offices at the time in Poland. We had an office in Iceland. We had an office in New York. I was the office in Canada. It was just my little apartment, and we had an office in Australia for a short period of time as well. And it was great for operations because there's usually somebody always awake that could handle issues that happen. But the way that we kept cohesion in the company was that we would often do offsites. So every year, you do 2 trips, pick a big city, and you go out there. If you like acquisition stories, I've got to tell you about the last offsite where I was doing the diligence for the acquisition while I was rushing to the boarding line on the plane.
Before we do get into the acquisition and exit, because I know that Justin's going to chop it at the bit for that sort of thing. What is it that you're working on now, if not Sling?
I'm actually still working for Toast. Still working on my exit. There are things that I'm working on. Can't really talk too much about them publicly. But that being said, I mean, the acquisition's been great, and I love working with people that I work with day to day.
So take us back then to, you mentioned that you've been kind of through this process at least a little bit, or at varying degrees of getting a startup off the ground, successful, not successful, that sort of thing. So tell us a little bit about some of these first experiences that you had trying to get startups off and going, and some of the bumps that you ran into.
Third or fourth, Sling was my fourth startup, I believe. The first one was in college, just trying to get something off the ground in my dorm room. Didn't work out, obviously. Then I graduated, and there was 4 of us that were like, okay, let's not get a job. Let's actually try to do a startup. I graduated around 2008, 2009, and I was the tech lead, but we also had people who had different functions. So if you are going to partner with somebody, make sure that they have complementary skills, not the same ones.
Mm-hmm.
That fell apart after about the first year. We actually had a pilot customer there, and we couldn't come to terms on how we were going to structure our business. So step 1, agree on that. Then about a couple of years after I was working, I had this idea for a product that I wanted to try. And it was sort of about the right time. Quit my job, sold my house, moved back in with my parents.
Hardcore. That's awesome.
Yeah, just tried to do the startup. It was literally 12 to 16 hours a day of just coding. And after about a year and a half, I kind of burnt myself out. And this was right at the time when Docker was becoming a thing. A lot of the containerization and terraforming of infrastructure was becoming a thing. So I spent the bulk of my time in that period just fighting with these operational issues that would just be completely automated several years later. And I didn't know it. And I concluded as a result of that I'm a terrible manager. So the next thing I need to do is figure out my management skills. Because I can't just hire somebody to do that for me. That's a function of my own personal development. So that was sort of the next career goal. And then
what
after
did you
that,
do to develop and hone your your management abilities? How did you dig into that?
Yeah, so my original intent was to just get a small gig that I could work several days a week and then continue working on my project. So I got this one gig. It was for 6 months. I was like, great, 6 months, I'm in and out and I can go back to my thing. And they were like, no, you can't leave. How about you work 4 days a week? I'm like, sure, great, I'll work 4 days a week. And the company that I joined was not the best in terms of management. So if you're going to learn your management skills aren't just managing a team. They also include things like politics and communication. Find the shittiest company you can in terms of management and work them, right? And what you'll find is if you do your job right, you'll be a shit umbrella for everybody underneath you. And then you try to work your way up. So the way that this particular company worked was every time there was an issue, they would start at the top and then work their way down the org tree to figure out who to blame. So my strategy there was pretty simple. It was okay, well, you can blame me. Anything you want. Take your pick. As long as I get to the work and I get the credit for it, you can blame me. And every time things were going, issues would happen, I would get in front of it and make sure I communicated with everybody so that they at least knew something might happen. And I told them, if it did happen, call me, we'll figure it out. I became a relatively popular manager to work under, and I got a bunch of teams underneath me, and things went pretty well.
I now have a new term. I love shit umbrella. I think that's going to have to go on the LinkedIn somewhere.
And the race is on. The race is on because it looks like shitumbrella.com is not registered. So
oh no.
We'll see who gets to it first. No, I love that term. That's amazing. Yeah. Real quick, this episode is brought to you by Delta Systems, which is what Aaron and I do when we're not talking through microphones to you, the people of the internet. We've got a really, really great software team here, and we love to work with cool people on cool projects. So if that sounds like you and you've got a problem or you're in some kind of a jam, go to deltasystems.com, grab a time with us. We can beat up on your problem together, and if there's a fit there, amazing, we'll help you out. So deltasystems.com, grab an appointment, and hey, maybe we can work together.
So that worked out brilliantly well. Gave me a lot of really good political skills, because to survive in a situation like that, you have to know how to deflect blame and whatnot. And basically I just took the Jesus route, which is like, all of your sins are mine, and I'll help you figure it out. And we did some good work. The funny thing as well that, like, in retrospect, looking back, was like that time where I took that year and a half to try to build my own product was probably the quickest advancement I ever had to any of my technical skills, because all of the technical problems were my responsibility. And one of the nice things that I developed in that process was like this idea that like really aren't any technical things that I couldn't address at some layer. And I knew while I was going through that process that I became a terrible manager in that process was when I was like making commits to Python WebAuth, which is like this incredibly low level HTTP protocol processing thing. I was like, I'm trying to build an application for users. Why am I modifying code this low? So that's when I was like, okay, maybe I should get a different job and do somewhere else. But yeah, it certainly gave me the technical chops to be able to do a lot of the things that came after.
I love that idea that like if the buck stops here, and if you're a company of one, it stops with you. Everything is your responsibility. You don't enjoy a pressure relief valve. You have to solve the problem, or you have to quit and go home. And that's very stressful and very hard, but it does make you grow a lot.
I had a similar conversation about career trajectory and path with somebody else, and most of their questions were actually centered around like why I did the things I did. Because I'm at a point in my career now where I guess I don't have to work if I don't have to. But, the question came up, it's like, well, why do you keep working? And the answer for me has always been consistently the same, which is like, it's an avenue to growth is the short way to say it. But the other way to say it was like, when I was a kid, I looked up to technologists, people I saw in documentaries that were doing all these incredible things. Also in the sports that I do, it's like the people who were jumping off mountains and whatnot. Those are the people that I looked up to. And I always wondered what it took to be able to do things like that. And I concluded that like the only way I'm going to figure that out is if I actually just try to do them. And that's always been the core motivator going forward. And it's the thing that sort of keeps me on track. What's sort of like come along on the side, sort of like the side cart of this whole process, is the value of the relationships that I develop and my mentorships with other people to help them grow in their own careers as well.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I'm sure that Justin he's got his own answers, and they're probably not too dissimilar. But that's I always say that I'm still here because I love what I do and I love who I do it with. I'm a product of an old school generation of there's loyalty to the company. You're a company person. I've worked in this organization now for over 20 years. Which, in this day and age is like unheard of. Actually, people always are raising their eyebrows. They're like, what are you still doing there? It's like, I like what I do and I like who I do it with. And if I'm going to spend the majority of my time in a situation where I need to, earn money or whatever, those are the things that I want to do. And so, it's, yes, you do, you get to grow, you get to learn. I feel like I have developed just truckloads over the course of that time period. Even though it's been in the same organization, I've had a lot of different roles and done a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, at every step of the way, I've enjoyed what I've done and who I've done it with. And to me, that's one of the biggest motivating factors for me. I like to be around people. I like to help people. I like for people to be able to count on me, and if I'm going to be spending 8+ hours a day, looking at like this guy here and talking with him, I want to make sure it's an enjoyable experience. And here we are. So that's where I'm at.
You've developed a talent for lying. If talking to me for 8 hours a day is an enjoyable experience for you.
No, I didn't say like just you for 8 straight hours. I mean, that's, we got to temper that a little bit, but
got to bring on someone who smiles and makes a joke once in a while, huh? No, absolutely. Business is a team sport, and working on tech is fun. It's more fun in groups, and yeah, I think we do a lot. Getting better and developing and growing is like hugely satisfying to me, and I think to most people who actually have legitimate real skills, or in sport, or in tech, or in business, or whatever. And it's like, oh, because they love the game. Like it's the joy is in the process, the joy is in the doing, which I can see from your big smile that resonates with you.
The funny thing is like it doesn't matter who I talk to in terms of high achievers. They're all built the same way. It's like they legitimately enjoy what they're doing. It's like, and for me, it goes back to my story about being in high school. I was awake till like 4 a.m. every night just writing code. My parents thought I was playing video games, but I was like digging through, MFC manuals and OpenGL APIs and stuff like that. It was fun.
I think that you're a really fun counterexample because Daniel and I both enjoyed hazing computer science students back in college who had interest in video games. And we're like, I know that you love video games, but this is computer science. Do you love math? And then you went straight for the graphics and enjoyed it. That's the opposite of what we usually saw.
Oh yeah. The math, oddly enough, still stays with me. Like there's this odd perverse part of me that loves the feeling of like getting ready for an exam or an assignment or like working on something incredibly complex just for the sake of the complexity, and the math is just right there with it. And the odd thing is like, so it's been more than a decade since university. I understand the math now better than I did back then, and I don't know how that works exactly.
Well, the real world application, you're able to actually, where the rubber meets the road, you can actually put it down there.
Yeah, philosophically, like the language and vocabulary that you have to some extent informs the thoughts that you're capable of having. And when you understand these mathematical concepts, you find analogs all day, every day in life. And it's like, oh, this is like an eigenvector. The number of times I'm like, oh, we're just optimizing on this line, or like you see that stuff pop out, and it's like, oh, because I know the foundations, I have this metaphor that's really apt and helpful in the kinds of thoughts that I can have. So I love math, and I think we learn it not because it's important to know how to do math, but it makes us smarter and gives us these kinds of like building blocks for vocabulary.
Yep.
Amazing. So I have a question that I'm not really sure how to ask, so I'm just going to ask it. What do you do when you're like the CTO of a really big company that has teams across like the entire globe? Like what is your day-to-day job?
Actually, before I jumped on the podcast, one of the things I was doing was going through a lot of the people who I felt mentored me. And like Ray Dalio is actually at the top of the list. So I was actually physically typing out all my principles. One of my principles for management on the CTO side, at least for the scale of organizations that I specialize in, is you protect the revenue stream as priority 1, you support your people as priority 2, and then you create competitive advantages as priority 3. It's like in order, right? So any threats to the revenue stream, priority 1. Anything that could disrupt the workflow, the work environment, priority 2. And then priority 3 is competitive advantages. Right? Addressing that tech debt, making sure that you can scale up as you grow, that sort of thing.
Do you think that changes substantially if you get a lot smaller?
Substantially, no. But the distribution of that work will change. So what I mean by that is like, I guess, sort of to explain the verticals that I specialize in. Actually, I'll grab the whiteboard right now. This is useful.
Get your
This is
books,
awesome.
Aaron. We're going
That's
to school.
Yes.
All right. So I'm sure there's a good portion of your audience that's read Jeffrey Moore, Crossing the Chasm. Okay. Technology adoption lifecycle. Percent of market. And then typically this is called TAM, I think, in the product space, but this is basically your total market. It's a Gaussian curve for most businesses. But in tech, there's a chasm. Not just tech, but it gets pronounced the most in tech. It looks something like this. All right. So remember, this is adoption across the market. Here's your startup. Most companies fail to even make it to this point. At this point, you got revenue, right? That's sort of like the biggest milestone. I don't think I'll ever do another startup that isn't already generating revenue. Just way too hard. I'm not built for it. Then you scale up. This is all technical debt right here, right? So like you've got a small handful of customers, you're tailoring your product specifically to meet those needs, and you're growing. The problem that Jeffrey points out in his book is that the people who live here and buy your product are very different in terms of their values than the people who live here. The people who live here are looking for a competitive advantage. The people who live here are looking for a standard solution. So I usually come in somewhere here-ish and then try to get you here. And usually here-ish somewhere is your exit. And the way that this plays out in the technology is that you get sort of two things when it comes to the technical side of the technical debt you've incurred because you've been trying to service a whole bunch of very different individual clients that are forming this portion of the curve. So you've got to get that all straightened out so that it is maintainable. And then the second part of that is scaling it to a larger scale, right? So when I took over as CTO of Sling, the scaling portion, well, and also the technical debt portion were things that I had to address. And then eventually, if your product scales, works well for a large group of people, you get to this portion of the market, right? The closer you get to this side, the more risk you're taking, so the more your reward. But also, the closer you get to this side, the more responsibilities you've got, and the more of a generalist you have to be.
We work with a lot of people who have teams of 2 and 3 and 5 people, and then we work with people who have teams of 70 and 80 and 100 people. And yeah, there's, I'm always impressed by how general small company founders are. They're just, I told this a couple of times on the podcast, but I was in a great conference talk and had someone ask a question of the presenter saying, what do you call someone who can like write the product and do the marketing and just listed off a whole myriad of things, like knows the finances? And it's like, yeah, founder, you call that person founder. No one else can do it. So
exactly. Yeah. The other thing that happened while I was CTO, right as we're addressing all of the technical debt that, sort of inherited as I got into the role, was COVID. And so part of my job was to make a recommended strategy for our CEO. And so like my hypothesis going into COVID was pretty simple. It's like, this will probably be a catalyst for inflation. So, my responsibility to the business was to try to keep our headcount static as we grew, right? Which is sort of the challenge of being in that particular situation, because the company's trying to grow and grow and grow, and you're going to hit bottleneck after bottleneck, and you've got to grow past it without having to hire teams into these verticals to keep you alive. That's why it's such a fun technical challenge to actually go through that process. And that's what we did. And, we put all of our additional revenue that we were able to generate, our profits, into finding more revenue, building out a sales team, right? And basically just trying to grow. And that way, no matter what happened at the end of that process, we had a better chance of survival, A, because our overhead was minimized, right, in terms of labor, but also B, because our revenues were going to be higher.
So I'm curious from like a technical aspect, how is it that you, in this specific instance, but also in general, handle that technical debt? To get you across that chasm, there's any number of pitfalls that you could fall into. It's like, I want to add more features. I want to future-proof this thing. I want to rewrite the whole shebang. I want a different front end. I want more people. So how did you, in this particular case, but then again, in general, handle the technical debt portion once you get to that jumping off point?
Yeah. I think the two answers that come to mind are that the general answer is like, you hire the right people, for one. I think ultimately, like, the thing that impacts the long term of your success as an executive is your ability to hire correctly and fire quickly. But secondly, we were lucky. In general, I'd rather be lucky than effective. And in this case, we were very lucky because my prior job dealt a lot with databases, and Postgres in particular. So I had the experience. There's a bit of there's a story. Got onboarded as CTO, and basically it was a infield promotion. It's like, here you go, you got to fix this, and I had to diagnose the problem. From my cursory look at the code base, like, the previous engineers thought that the major bottlenecks were in the code because that's where the bulk of their experience was. So there were a lot of like optimizations in the code for things that really didn't matter. And the things that were bottlenecks were actually more on the database side. So, well, step one, I was like, okay, after dealing with a lot of the, potential increase in IOPS and whatnot, and then trying to play with resources, it's like, let's upgrade the database and let's see what happens. So, coincidentally, that coincided with a trip that I had where I was taking a road trip from Guadalajara to Belize. I had my laptop, I was writing code while we were driving on the road, and I wrote a process that allowed us to basically, without any downtime, upgrade major versions of the database. One of the nice side effects of that is that it repacked all of the tuples and all of the indexes in the database. And all of a sudden we had all this capacity and we're like, where did this come from? Coincidentally, one of the best hires I ever made got onboarded at the same time. So me and him went down this journey of like figuring out the operations for this specific database. And we nailed it. And it still scales very well today. So we reviewed all of our internal operational procedures, made sure we had the correct processes in place for everything. And it ends up that we didn't have to go out and hire a huge operational team to keep our system online.
That's excellent. So optimization is the first stop, basically.
Yeah. And like, there's things that you don't know. So go do some research. And modern era, you've got ChatGPT or whatever AI you choose, ask it questions. Yeah. Measure first, right? Premature optimization being the root of all evil.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, as my father-in-law always said, I've cut this board 3 times and it's still too short. Yeah, I feel like
Yeah, the biggest performance increase your program will ever experience is going from non-working to working. Love that.
So talk to me now about you're addressing the technical debt. I know that you said there was an exit point that was just on the other side, but talk to me now about the other side of that chasm. So you got your sales team, or you're gearing towards sales. You stabilize or at least address the technical debt. However, you made your way across the chasm. Now you're kind of ready to go. You're going to add fuel to the fire. What happens there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was the bulk of it up to the exit was actually a lot of just technical debt improvements. But then beyond the initial optimization, I knew that my objective was to keep the headcount static, right? Like, because now that I've seen, the rubber hit the road in this case, where we avoided having to hire 5 people to maintain the operations because we could do it ourselves, I just extrapolated. So there was a time where like half of my month was just one-on-ones. And I was training people and coaching people to adopt the highest level of responsibility for their position that they could. And we had like juniors submitting performance optimizations to the clients, right? So just teaching and training as quickly as I could. Yeah. And at the end of it, we were just firing on all fours, producing, not only new systems, but like almost completely new products for potential shift into different verticals, stuff like that.
Is Sling the one and only place that you've done that entire spectrum of things, or is that something that you have duplicated in other places, or have you just like jumped in and out at various points in other organizations?
I've done it piecemeal for various organizations. So one useful thing, and that's if you're in an internship and you have the luxury of switching employers, do it, because you're going to learn stuff as you switch positions, and you're going to get different parts of the whole picture. Obviously, I didn't do much of the leadership stuff while I was an intern, but at different companies, I've done different portions of that curve as we grow. You're going to see the same sort of growth chart as you release, for example, a new product within the same company. And it's going to have similar requirements. Yeah, and you kind of have to but there's an element to leadership that you kind of learn not just from the tech, but from doing extracurricular activities. Like my sports and whatnot are a great catalyst for learning those leadership skills. And the process is just like I described in terms of like training somebody. It's like, I'm going to teach you to be a scuba diver. Well, there's a difference between somebody who has like 1 dive and somebody who's got 100.
Yeah, there is.
And you can make that go faster, right? The 20 years doing the same thing over and over again is just 1 year of experience repeated 20 times, right? So it takes skill to learn how to be able to take somebody who's got, very little experience at doing something, boiling down the steps so that there are distinct cues that they can look at as they go from step to step, and then giving them the leeway to try things that are risky, but make sure that it doesn't hurt them, right? So if you're scuba diving, getting hurt means like getting hurt scuba diving. But if you're in the office and you're writing code, getting hurt might mean, getting chewed out in front of everybody by an executive, or, you giving something to somebody who's too junior who doesn't have like the clout in the company to be able to defend their decisions against criticism. So you have to measure and gauge and allow people to progress. And I would say that like the biggest cultural change that we had at Sling came when we went from when, you know, the rule of thumb became, it's okay to try and fail, but it's not okay to not try. And then once we got past that hurdle, everybody was just like submitting performance optimizations and everybody was seeing their own personal growth. And we were tracking it like month to month. Here's what you did here. And here's where the outcomes led.
I think it's the same thing with weight training, right? You want to put yourself in a position where you're struggling and at the very, very limits of what you can do, but not so much that you get hurt. And then what you can do expands as you push yourself that way. And then, of course, back it up with data. You got to track it. So I like that you like you had the tracking piece too. So,
and I would also add like to the one-on-ones. One-on-ones are very, very useful tools, but I would say that the bulk of the industry uses it as a way of holding somebody accountable, and that's not the way I look at it. Like every adult relationship that you have, no matter what the relationship is a voluntary relationship inherently, and that includes the relationship that you have with your employer. So one of the things that I was forthright with everybody once we start our one-on-ones was like, this situation has to work as well for me as it does for you. So I'm carving out an hour of my time every month so that we can do things for your own sake and on your own terms. And a lot of it is almost like the process is you listen to them and then you give them your honest opinion and explain how that opinion fits in the overall picture. Often, like, if you do your job right, people will come for you for advice outside of work. And then more importantly, it's like, I've always been clear to people who I've hired that if there's a better opportunity out in the world for you, then the best thing I can do for you is help you get that opportunity.
Yeah, I love that. And it's a big part of my weekly routine is one-on-ones with the staff as well. And it's something that I cherish for a lot of different reasons, but I look at it that same way too. It's a connection point. It's time, it's dedicated time that you get my attention and I get yours. There's not any noise. We can filter out all the stuff. Yes, we talk business. You know, there are certain things you always have to touch point with metrics and things like that. But at the end of the call, it's like, you know, if 2 or 3 months go by and you're hearing something that's huge from me for the first time, we have failed in our one-on-ones.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something that I really, really love getting to do with the team.
So I got to know. I've been we buried the lead hard, and I want to close the loop. So you got to tell me about this exit story.
Yeah. Let's see where to start. There are limits on what I can talk about, obviously, with every exit. The exit was good. I mean, like every exit is going to be slightly different, and there are good parts and bad parts. I think this one was handled fairly well. But the funny story was like I said, every year we're doing these trips to different countries, and it's like you pick a city everybody wants to go to, everybody's pumped about it. You go on, you do this trip and you come back. And the potential for an acquisition was still somewhat nascent in the company. So you don't want that information spreading across everybody. You want to, you know, make sure that like that acquisition makes sense for the equity holders and then for you like for your team and so forth, and set up a plan before you broadcast it to everybody. So I'm doing the diligence, the technical diligence while we're in the offsite in Barcelona. And so we're in the offsite. On occasion, I'm back in my apartment, just like working away. And then, you know, finally I get everything prepared, but like I've got to go catch a plane. And so I've got to go navigate a maze in an airport. My computer is just nearly dead. I get to the gate while the plane's starting to board, and I serendipitously find just a outlet on the ground, plug my laptop in, and I'm sitting there going, and like, you know, trying to connect to the internet. I've got the documents ready. I just have to hit send. The last person gets on the plane. I hit enter. It's uploading. It's like final call for boarding. Uploaded. Grab it. Run to the plane. It's like, don't leave without me. And then fly back. I forgot how long the flight was, but then when I landed, I was seeing responses to the email. It's like the documents are great. I'm like, thank God, because I was in the air.
You're
Yeah,
literally
it was a
exiting.
fun time.
It's like
Literally exiting. Oh, it was fun times. Yeah, but like I said, the exit was well planned. We actually got to do an offsite with the new team out in Poland. First time I visited Krakow. Excellent. Uh, I got to tease my future boss a bit because he's a bit squeamish with heights. And in Krakow, if you go there, there's a hot air balloon that's a weather station, but they've rigged it so that you can walk on a gondola underneath it, and it's on a tether, so you can go up. And somehow we were able to like convince him to go up this balloon. He goes up to the top, and he's just like he's death gripping on the wires, right? And I'm like, I have experience with altitude sports, and he knows that. So I'm like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I'm good." And he's like, "Uh, are you nervous about?" So I'm just trying to figure out where he's at, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm a bit nervous." I'm like, "What if I did this?" I jumped up and down. And just went up and down. Yeah, but we get to the ground. Yeah, it was a good time.
Does this make you more or less nervous? How about this? More or less nervous?
Yeah, super.
That's a lot of fun. I will say though, like to your point, Justin, that like doing startups is emotionally very, very difficult. Um, and like one of the things that's helped me quite a lot in the process is actually learning how to deal with emotionally very difficult things. So, find something you're afraid of and go do it. It's like if you've never did a skydive before, go do a skydive. Um, that'll prepare you in the very least for some of the emotional difficulties that come with it. But then you have a touch point. The touch point is like you go to a board meeting or whatnot and people chew you out and you're like, yeah, but you're not as intimidating as the shark that I saw, at 60 feet in Mexico.
I
right?
jumped out of a perfectly good airplane. This is okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the volume gets turned down on that stuff a lot once you have some experience. And yeah, I noticed that like as I got some business experience, went through some bigger deals and things like personal life stuff that used to be really stressful and really hard, the volume just gets turned down so much because you're like, well, I mean, it's not like there's a $1 million deal hanging in the balance here. It's just like I'm having some static with my dad or whatever it happens to be. Like yeah. We grow, right? We push ourselves and we grow. It's that theme emerging again.
Well, that pretty much brings us to a close. Rishi, I really appreciate your time. This has been super fun. It's not at all where I thought we might go, but this has been terrific, man. It's really cool.
It's been a pleasure.
How can people reach you?
I am mostly on LinkedIn. I tend not to have too many social media accounts. There's just not enough time in the world. But you can find me on LinkedIn. Feel free to add me and send me a message.
Sounds good. Justin, closing thoughts?
I like Rishi. He should come back.
I agree. We'll have to put him on the list. Unless we get off here and he's like, okay, these guys are, no, I'm not coming back here. Fingers crossed that's not the case.
No, you guys are awesome.
Well, thanks again, Rishi. Justin, thank you as always. And certainly thank you to our listeners. We hope that you're enjoying the show. And if you have any ideas, thoughts, suggestions, things that you'd like to throw our way, please feel free to pop in some comments, hit the subscribe button down there if you were so inclined. And I've mentioned it before, but stay on the lookout for some new and interactive ways that we're going to be talking and working with you all, our audience, over the course of this year. Thank you all very much. And we'll see you next time on SaaS That App.
Thanks again, Rishi.
Cheers.
Thanks for cruising along with us on SaaS That App. We hope you grabbed some insights that were inspiring, actionable, or at least entertaining.
If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe and leave a review.
Until next time, keep building, keep growing, and keep those apps sassy.